Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm your host, Jaquel, the world's worst YouTuber. Today, we are resurrecting the car vlog. And even though I wanted to drive around and just bullshit and hang out, it's winter and my car keeps vibrating, which means my stand keeps going like this the entire fucking time. Wouldn't this be great for the entire fucking video? I come to you on this, the day I'm filming is January 7th of 2021, and boy, was 2020 a shit show. It was such a shit show that I hardly even uploaded any videos. Can't blame anybody other than myself, but I just wanted to come to you in this car vlog and sort of, oh, excuse me, recap sort of why 2020 was so bad. What is my voice doing? Why I really was super inactive in 2020. Now, just a heads up. I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm not looking for anything. I just want to tell my story. I just want to say some shit and get it out there because I think it's the only way that I'm really going to get over this and be able to come back to YouTube. You know, so many different creators have been like, oh, I've been so absent and blah, 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 poor me, and I'm coming back. I can't guarantee 100% that I'm coming back because I tried to come back several times throughout the course of the year. Didn't really turn out that way. So, this is going to be a long story full of size, and I'm just going to do it uncut raw, just raw dog the whole thing, motherfucker. Let's get into it. So I think the best spot to pick up is probably right around when everything started locking down in March, April, thereabouts, their time. That's when things started falling off for me on my channel. I was trying to do a bunch of, I was really getting into the coffee table internet adventures. I was doing just basic run-of-the-mill YouTube shit, and I was having a lot of fun with that. But for some reason, I moved things and I thought I was upgrading, and technically I was. I was upgrading and I got a desk out of my in-laws' garage to bring into the apartment to use. Everything got jumbled around, and to me, what felt sort of like an upgrade actually wound up bringing me out of my element entirely altogether. And that was a real bummer. I tried to find myself to get back into that headspace of that creative ingenuity, and it just didn't come to me. Also, it was around March, end of March, early April. I was sitting down and I was watching a video where Anthony Padilla was having a sit down with people who have DID, or dissociative identity disorder. And I had gone through a lot of big issues and big traumas and shit like that, a lot of bad mental health in 2019 that actually put me off from doing a lot of YouTube uploading. So really it was 2 years straight where my YouTube channel was really kind of shit, except for a really productive 6-month chunk between October and April of 2019 to 2020. And a lot of weird shit happened. There were voices talking to me. I thought they were spirits and deities and angels and shit like that. However, I just got to a point where I had to put that shit all up in a nice little box and tuck it away and say, fuck it, I'm not letting this shit get the best of me. What is going on? Fuck this, fuck this, fuck this. And then I was watching that Anthony Padilla video. And they were talking about their experiences, 3 people that have dissociative identity disorder. And they were talking about their experiences. And all of a sudden something clicked and I was like, that's it. That's what it was. That was what was going on. I didn't understand it. I was uncovering a whole bunch of uncovered childhood trauma, and these alters were talking to me. And then as I was starting to sort of piece this together, I dissociated really heavily. And by the end of the day, all of my alters were there and they had revealed themselves to me. They were like, yeah, it was about time. Hey, we're here. And the thing that really put me off is back in high school, I started dealing with 1 or 2 of these alters, but I thought it was a figment of my imagination. I thought it was some really highly advanced coping mechanism that I had designed for myself, because these alters would come and they would go. And the big thing with dissociative identity disorder is dissociative amnesia, where when you switch, you don't remember what happened. I didn't have that. I never had that, so I packed it away, locked it away, put it up in a nice little box and said, fuck you, deal with this for later, sort of like how I tend to do a lot anyway. So for several years, I was not dealing with altars. I knew they were a thing, but I was like, okay, what the fuck? I don't know how to go about this. How do I confront this? But then they were there. But what was the big thing about this that made me like, okay, there's got to be some kind, if these are altars, and I can remember what happened when they were fronting, and it feels like it was me, but I wasn't the one in control. What is this then? So I just typed it up. Dissociative identity disorder without amnesia. And what I got was OSDD-1B. Basically, with any of these disorders, OSDD-1A, OSDD-1B, dissociative identity disorder, they happen and they stem from childhood trauma. Basically, some really bad, ugly, nasty shit happens to you, and as a child, so your brain says, I can't deal with this. You don't do it. Your brain does it for you and sort of locks those feelings and those memories away. But it's during a state where your personality is forming. So different personality states will form from those covered up memories that weren't there. So I get completely derailed, completely sideswiped, because now, since they revealed themselves, I was having all of these dissociated feelings and all of these different problems that came with dissociation, because when they revealed themselves, I started recalling the trauma from childhood. And here's a trigger warning. I realized that there were several people in my childhood that sexually assaulted me repeatedly when I was a child. So now that I've recovered these things, I had validation to suggest that this actually happened, and this is actually a disorder that I deal with and have dealt with my entire life, and I just didn't realize it. So I spent some time piecing things together, realizing when these people were there, and realizing that I actually have this vast inner world, which is sort of like a dream world in my head. I don't know how to explain it, but a lot of people who have disorders like this have an inner world. And I had spent dream times going with them and I had spent my life with these people, but it was while I was sleeping. So now I'm getting into this situation where I'm recovering and uncovering all of these things, and I'm trying to make sense of my life and the really bad mental stuff that happened in 2019. I'm piecing things together, and no matter what I do, I just can't really explain everything. Like the car that I'm sitting in right now. We went looking in February of 2019 looking for a new car, and these voices that I had started hearing kept going, you're going to get a new car, you're going to get a new car, that a new car is coming, things are going to happen, things are going to be good, and blah, 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 blah. And when things like that happened, when they would repeat it, usually it meant that it was going to happen. And we got a car, which is the car that I'm sitting in. So little things like that made me like, okay, alters, childhood trauma does not explain everything that happened and everything that I experienced. And my headmates because it's easier to say headmates than alters, because sometimes there are headmates that aren't alters. There are things called fictives, fragments, introjects, things, personalities that aren't full-blown alters or a full-blown piece of yourself, but they are still made in your mind as a way to cope with the trauma. So my headmates, whether they were fictive fragments or full-blown alters, they kept saying, we've always had outside help. We've always had outside help. And I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? So they were just like, if we tell you, you will probably melt down, because it would start to validate the things that happened last year. So I'm like, okay, what the fuck? As time went on, a bunch of interesting things started happening, and I was trying to just piece together some semblance of a YouTube career. I think I did the Siren Head video. I did another coffee table internet adventure. I did a couple of different things while I was still dealing with this, but eventually it just became all consuming and all encapsulating, and it just took over my life. And then I started talking to Lord Hades. Yeah, well, crazy thing, I started seeing things that were outside of me, and since I've always been sort of like spiritual and into dealing with energy. In high school, I realized I was a psychic vampire, so I started dealing with energy and energy manipulation and stuff like that. And this is where some of the people that have come from my other goofier content that are watching this are going to be like, okay, you lost me. That's kind of what I've been worried about talking about things like this, which is why I attempted to make a second channel called Sydney of Thra. It just didn't really pan out. I'm not saying I'm going to do away with that channel. I'm just saying I tried making that other type of content on that other channel, but eventually that also fell through. My entire life, spirits and spirituality, spooks and specters, all of this spooky stuff had been my bread and butter, and I'd always loved this stuff, and I'd always been into it. But I never really had the opportunity to do much with it, because as soon as I started getting into it and really developing myself further, things got scary and I didn't know how to deal with it. Like, there was a period in my life where I started researching the Lemegeton, or the Solomonic Grimoire, which is where a lot of people that start working with demons, they'll go to the first book of that grimoire, the Goetia. And I was really dumb about it, and I had to banish Lord Person, one of the 9 demon kings, out of my apartment, so I sort of tucked that shit away. But I'd always loved that stuff, and I was always chasing an experience. And now Lord Hades himself reveals himself to start talking to me. I'm like, okay, Lord Hades, the god of the dead, he's the king of the underworld. That makes sense. If I'm going to humor this, then it makes sense that Hades would be there, right? And then Lady Hecate was there, and I was like, okay, all these spooky people are just popping up. And then something happened, and it was really weird that I don't know how to explain it. But basically, as I accepted that one spirit was talking to me, all of a sudden, all of these spirits started flooding forward, and I'm like, whoa, hold up, hang on. So basically, I started doing research, and Lady Hecate, because I can hear them. I can interact with them, I can speak to them, I can tell if somebody's sitting right here next to me, because I started hearing the voices in my head that were my alters, and they were all internal. And it's like somebody else's thoughts are in my head. Somebody else is dictating the thoughts that I am hearing. Somebody else is dictating the sounds that I am perceiving, but it's all mental. It's not actually out here. It's not actually out there. It's not actually visual, but it's like a lot like maladaptive daydreams, where you sort of have this fantasy and then you realize you're not in control of it. So because I was able to sort of hear those things, I got used to hearing the voices in my head. And that's when I started being able to hear deities and spirits. And I was just like, whoa. So I humor it a little bit, and I'm not like full force into it, because at this point I'm still in a mild form of disbelief. I'm like, all right, let's see where this takes me. I feel comforted enough, but I'm always going to have a holdout that this isn't a deity. It's actually another altar that I'm talking to. And then I download TikTok and discover the wonderful world of WitchTok, which was really cool when I first got into it. Then I realized that WitchTok is really just a whole bunch of drama enthusiasts, if you will. And then George Floyd. Something that I find super interesting is when I started getting into all of this and realized that the magic that I had been doing, like the spirit work and the energy work and communicating with spirits, all of that was in itself some form of witchcraft or some form of magic. What I had been doing, I had actually been a witch my entire life, and I didn't even realize it. Just small little things like, oh, let's throw these things together, ta-da, and now it's a potion, or da-da-da, just trying to figure things out that worked, or working with energy and casting shields. I realized that my entire life I had just been unconsciously stumbling onto my own abilities, which in some people would consider witchcraft, but it's not necessarily witchcraft in and of itself. Witchcraft is more or less the craft of witches, which is more like the potions, herbs, brews, spell casting, but I had also done that before, so I just expanded on that and started developing my own craft. At that point, I was getting a lot of tips, a lot of pointers, I was doing a lot of research, and then George Floyd was killed. And that sparked off everything thing. So I thought it was interesting because if you are not aware of the TikTok nonsense and how TikTok has sort of like become a front runner of information, like it's really become, in many ways, depending on where you look on TikTok, TikTok has become like sample size YouTube plus Reddit. Because if you're actually looking in the correct areas and you get past straight TikTok, and you actually got, if you get past straight TikTok, move past thirst trap TikTok, and you actually start getting into your own niche, you realize that there's actually a lot of people that are pumping out information, and that information is actually usually good. Don't ever take anything at face value. Always cite your sources and double check and make sure, but it's at least a great way to have a jumping point to look into things. So on June 5th, June 6th, the hexening occurred. And I don't know if everybody calls it the hexening, but when the Black Lives Matters protests really hit hard, witches decided that on that full moon in June, in the beginning of June, that they were going to go forth and everybody was going to cast protections, everybody was going to do this, that, the other, and all of these witches banded together, even young witches or baby witches, younglings, witchlings, however you want to put it, because some people think that if you call somebody a new practitioner a baby witch, that it's actually an insult. And you know what? I don't mean it as an insult, but if you take it as an insult, okay, whatever. I just thought it was really cool that everything lined up in that way, that I started getting into witchcraft just in time to realize, hey, I can help. I can do something to this. I can lend my energies. And I had a good time. I mean, I'm not going to say that any of the protests or any of that was a good time, but it really gave me personally the opportunity to be like, holy shit, I can actually do things and I actually can be a part of something and I can actually help affect change in some way. And that was really empowering. So now, alongside dealing with spirits or dealing with altars and uncovering childhood trauma, I actually wind up getting into spirits and spirituality again and start going hardcore, gung-ho, full force, because as I've also discovered, I'm autistic. I actually am autistic, and I don't really talk about it a lot because that just opens the door for people to be like, oh, self-diagnosing. I'm not self-diagnosed. I'm a traumatized autistic person. And then I realized that and I started going back through some of my videos and I'm like, oh my God, it's obvious. But spirits and spirituality have always sort of been that special interest for me. And since I was able to get back into it, I was just like, yes, all of it again, just dig my face into it. And I loved every second of it until it started getting scary again. So I would do a lot of research. And if you're going to be any kind of a magical folk, if you're going to be doing deity work, if you're going to be doing anything, whether it's witchcraft or something else, whether you're just a pagan or a spiritual person, I decided that research was going to be putting my best foot forward and then applying what I learned later on. So I sort of have this ebb and flow of like research. Oh, there's a new person. Let's talk to them. Oh, I don't want to talk to them. Or hey, let's see what they have to teach me, what they have to offer. And when I say person, I mean spirit. Because it's really weird. I realize that I'm actually a medium. I am a traumatized autistic medium. So that also gave validation to the experiences that I had had in 2019, realizing, wait, I'm not just crazy. That doesn't mean that everything that happened in 2019 was real or legit. I definitely believe that because of my trauma, that allows me to be a medium. Or I'm a medium and I'm just a traumatized medium and the two go hand in hand. But the problem is that since the two go hand in hand, at least for myself, I'm not going to say for everybody, but for myself, I do suffer with delusions and hallucinations. And it's not always easy to tell the difference between a delusion and an actual genuine spirit communication. So I'm doing all of this research, and I probably have put almost all of my time into research and dealing with the mental health bullshit. Because the two go hand in hand. At least for myself. Usually it does, because a lot of people say, oh, if you're a witch, you have to do shadow work, which isn't necessarily the case. Shadow work is a good thing to do, but it's not going to replace therapy. And shadow work is really just finding a way to confront those shadowy parts of yourself that you don't want to acknowledge or admit. So in a way that me looking at my childhood trauma and accepting it and trying to figure out exactly what happened was in itself shadow work, because they were part of the shadowy parts of myself that I didn't know how to accept. So in a way, as I was moving forward, I was also constantly doing shadow work as I was moving forward. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's a prerequisite to do witchcraft or to get into any kind of magical practice, because I generalize and say witchcraft, but you can actually also get into occultism. You can actually also just get into research, and magic is not limited to witchcraft. Now, I think I'm going to curb that off, because we can just sort of like string all of that information across the rest of the year. Just working with deities, talking to deities, reflecting on myself, doing self-work, dealing with all of these things in my own head and trying to figure out what the difference is. Meanwhile, trying to figure out that they're trying to find a balance between home life, spirit life, inner world life, because inner world life is just generalized, like my headmates and altars. So I'm trying to find a balance between all of these three worlds, and that's what happened and why sort of YouTube fell to the side. And that's why I've only put up like, I don't know, less than 10, just over 10 videos in all of 2020. Because I've been focusing on myself and trying to figure out what I want to deal with and accept into my life. Because basically, in my own worldview and my own pantheon, it's all real. It's not deities or angels, it's deities and angels. And they are also probably, I believe, there are actually spiritual light being aliens. And that doesn't mean that just because they're light beings, that they are good for you. Actually, I personally found that all of the light beings, the love and light entities, have been a detriment to me. And at this point in my craft, I'm actually working really well with Lord Set, the god, the Egyptian god of chaos and destruction. Lord Lucifer, believe it or not, Lady Lilith, and Lord Azazel. So all of these people are demons or fallen angels at this point. And I'm not going to count Set, because Set is a god, but he does definitely get roped into the infernal stuff, because so does Lady Hecate. She gets roped into the infernal stuff, and I don't think she's actually a demon. I don't think she's actually a fallen angel. I think there are gods that are also infernal gods that aren't angels or demons. Take Lord Hades, Lady Hecate, Lord Set. So a lot of the people that have come to rely on and actually lean on the most and have gained the most benefit from working with are actually Dark Lords. So, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with working with the lighter side of the spectrum. It's just not for me. And I have found that personally, a lot of people were like, oh, you're an angel, so you're upholding truth and light. No. No. Almost all of my negative experiences have come from working with angels and light beings. Either they don't like me, we don't jive, or I don't trust them. But in 2019, a lot of the problems that I had was because I was listening to the light side of the spectrum. And a lot of my happier, more fulfilling experiences have come personally from working with the dark, the dead, and the infernal. Not for everybody. To each their own, I suppose. I had a point to this. Point is, all of this has been strung along, and I don't think I want to really get into the magical craft entirely, because everybody's craft is to their own. Let's just say I'll work with the dark and spooky. Dark, spooky, and infernal. That's most of the shit that I deal with right now. Now, it was also in this time that I found out that I'm actually transgender. Yep, that was another saga in and of itself, because I started talking to and hanging out with my headmates and these spirits. So I see a projection of them the way that they present themselves to me, Because, okay, people see Lady Hecate differently than the way that I do. People see Lord Lucifer differently than the way that I do. But, like, honestly, here's the weird thing. Lucifer, to me, looks like me as a male, thin, with green serpent eyes. And I don't think that's how he actually looks, but for some reason, he reflects me in some way. So everybody's going to see these. Some people see Lucifer and they see Tom Ellis, Lucifer, the guy that plays Lucifer on the show Lucifer. But that's not what he actually looks like. And he doesn't act like that at all either. At least to me in my experience with him. But you could always tell, like, okay, even if they're technically gender fluid, like Lord Lucifer is the fallen angel. He looks very masculine to me. But technically, he's gender neutral. You could say Lady Lucifer, and as long as he okays it and is okay with you calling him Lady Lucifer, if he's okay with it, it's not going to be technically, practically inaccurate. I just believe he has a preference for he. So you can always tell that there's a masculine energy, or at least for me. I don't want to say you in general, but I just know from other people's experiences that seems to be a common thread. Lady Hecate, also, I believe, is technically gender neutral, but is a dark divine feminine. People refer to her as one of the dark mothers. So now I'm seeing these people and I start realizing that I have a spiritual projection. I have an inner world projection. And as I start doing this shadow work, digging into it, and actually realizing, first I had to identify this toxic masculinity, which I believe is a great way for any male to do shadow work. And there are actually a lot of females that suffer with toxic masculinity or being toxic to masculinity. Because toxic masculinity is everything that's wrong with the patriarchy, if you will. And there's nothing wrong with being a man. There's nothing wrong with being male. But the way that society has perpetuated the way that men should act, it's extremely toxic. And that's all I mean. Then I had to realize, oh, hey, I'm actually very queer. I'm actually very much not into, like I've said before, like I'm actually pansexual, but yeah, I'd still say that, but I actually am a lot more, well, if I'm a trans woman, I guess you could say that I'm more straight. I'm still not 100% sure how to explain everything in the way that I perceive it. And I don't know what's technically accurate. I'm only really cultivating on other people's testimonials and my own experiences. That's the empty one. Yes, 2 bang energies in one setting. I am officially graduated from being a Kyle and made a full transition into being a Dylan. Here's another fun thing. I have headmates. And now I can hear them. And they will make comments all the time. And sometimes I just laugh out loud for no reason. And sometimes it's not even just saying something, it's just more like an image, like I see what they thought or they gave me the thought. And it was just like, yep, we're a Dylan now. What's the female form of Dylan? What is the female form of Dylan? Leave it in the comments below. So there's that. And then I started realizing that based on my own, as I'm going through this shadow work, identifying toxic masculinity, embracing more of my own actual self, I'm realizing I am not a guy. It also became a little bit easier than it was before because now I realize that I am one of multiple alters inside of this brain. And that's the thing, is like, I'm the host. People ask, like, oh, which one's the original? There's no and the way that I see it, there's no original. As soon as that first fracture happens, that first piece of trauma that breaks away from the original, there is no original anymore. There isn't an original. You'd have to have your whole life and everything and all of your pieces together in order to say, oh, I'm the original. So we're all a part of the original. I am the host of this system. And then since I always identified with this face and I always identified with this body, I just assumed that I was male. So now all of those times I'm looking back, I'm like, not all men, talking about myself. I'm like, wait, I was never a man to begin with. That's not necessarily saying that, oh yeah, it is all men, but at the same time, it's like, if I was reflecting on myself, it wasn't an accurate comparison. Point is, one day I looked at myself and realized, oh my God, my alter self isn't even male. My alter self is not even male. This person here is not male. I am not a guy. So then I sat down and talked with my headmates and realizing that most of them are female. Like, so let's talk about transitioning. So I've been on hormones. I'm at the end of my 4th month on hormone therapy. I don't know if I'm going to actually do it. I don't know if I'm going to leave it in, but if we can get a side-by-side comparison to see the progress that I've come through. Yes, I know. Ooh, stubble. I'm lazy and I'm depressed. And also, if you're going to down on a trans person for having stubble, educate yourself. I'm not going to tell you to fuck off unless you're going to ignore the situation and just insist, oh, blah, blah, blah. Also, if you're just going to sit here and be like, oh, you'll always be a guy. There's 2 things I could say to that. 1, either I never was and I was put in the wrong body, or 2, I spent 28 years being a guy. I know some part of me will always be leaning a little male. It's not like I'm changing myself to become a false female self. I am becoming who I am actually. And that is just not this face. That's not this person. So my transition story actually isn't necessarily transitioning from male to female. It's also growing my hair back out, dyeing it black, playing with different colors. I believe that I forget what size I was at. I think it was like 7 something, 7/16, and now I'm at 3/4. And getting the septum piercing and getting more ink, if you haven't noticed yet. Painting my nails again. Starting getting into makeup again. Because I had started getting into makeup and I just kind of fell off. So, I'm transitioning my everything into being a more authentic version of myself. And that's me personally. But I can't ignore that I spent 28 freaking years parading around as a male individual. So yeah, I'll always be a guy, but I'm also actually, in reality, a woman. And if you don't like that, ladies fart. Moving on. So I think that really covers it. Let's recap. I am actually multiple people. Jaquel was never just Jaquel. I am also autistic. I am also a medium. I lost my train of thought. I'm also a transgender woman. I don't know if you can tell with my voice, but the way that I'm feeling my voice, I'm feeling that change. That second look at all of the spots and splotches on my face. This is second puberty in full swing. Oh my God, that was awful. And honestly, part of my hang up with coming back to YouTube has been like, oh, I've got this whole audience over here that's coming back for my reactions and my all this other stuff, which is why I tried making the other channel. But I think instead of limiting myself to, oh, Jaquel is over here and Sydney Thraw over there. Also, by the way, I was born with the name Aaron. I changed my name to Sid or Sydney. Sydney. Aaron's dead. Sydney's the new bitch running this body. Or Aaron had never been alive to begin with. Aaron died as soon as that first fracture happened, and I've always been secretly Sydney underneath this cold, hard, sexy chubby male exterior. Ah, the caffeine's kicking in. Hey, how's it going? So, moving forward, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do. I have a bunch of ideas, but it's not anything like just Jaquel has done before. But I think with everything that I have gone through and everything that I've dealt with, I tried to let Jaquel go. Because even if I was actually Sydney the whole time, that doesn't mean that I am not Aaron still. Aaron evolved into Sydney. The only real difference is that there's actually multiple people behind the Jaquel character. And we have put so much time and effort into creating the Jaquel character, the Jaquel persona, the Jaquel everything. So, I don't know if there's a point in doing like, oh, meet my alters, because we're all Jaquel. That's the thing about it, is we're all Jaquel. So if you look back, I can actually see like, oh, that's when so-and-so was fronting. Oh, that's when so-and-so was in headspace. That's definitely their persona. That's definitely the way that they do things. I'm seeing it all now that I'm looking back and I know what to look for. But the thing is, now there are 7 people in one brain that have put their life, blood, sweat, and tears into making this channel. I nor we are ready to give that up yet. So it's still just Jaquel, even though there are multiple people wearing the Jaquel mask. And it was never really just Jaquel to begin with. I fucking love that. Like, that little switcheroo right there. Just Jaquel. Is it really now? Friends, viewers, ferals and domesticated cryptids. Oh yeah, also I got married. I remembered because that was something that was in the ceremony, was my now wife. Yeah, I'm married now. That's still blows my mind. My wife had written that in our ceremony for like the opening intro, because we went to Colorado and we sort of went like, we eloped. Because it's like, we're never going to get the money to have a huge thing. And even if we are, why are we going to wait around for it? So we actually just saved up money. We eloped to Colorado. It was our wedding, as well it was our honeymoon. And it was a really good time. We enjoyed the hell out of ourselves. If we have it our way, we're actually going to consider moving out there at some point. It was amazing. But since she's also witchy and she's also into it, she's not as gung-ho hardcore into it, but she believes in just as much as I believe in. She's just not obsessed with it like I am. She wrote that in the ceremony, like, friends, ferals, and domesticated cryptids, welcome. I thought that was great. I think the best thing for I and my system, me and my headmates all together, me and my system to do was actually probably just to go ahead and do whatever we want on this channel, and it might actually just be a drastic departure. Something that I want to keep, definitely, the something that I've had the most pride in, definitely, has been the Coffee Table Internet Adventures. The problem is, the coffee table broke. The coffee table broke. So it's not going to be at a coffee table anymore. It's going to be at the kitchen table. So is it going to be the Kitchen Table Internet Adventures? I don't fucking know. Or I've got a fun theory about what if the apocalypse never happened? Because Ragnarok never happened. See, Ragnarok was a prophecy. And what if that prophecy already came and passed, but because this is the theory, I don't know if it's actual. What if Odin actually went and looked at the prophecy and he's like, Here's the problem. It's because we pissed off Loki. It's his rage that's going to do us in. So let's go back, make it up to Loki, be friends with him. We can overcome Ragnarok, and then we can go back and help prevent Midgard from their apocalypse. I love that theory, and I want to actually get into it. Really, this channel has always been supposed to have been a source for my creative outlet. This is supposed to be my art. And since my interests have changed, I can't really still be that same person anymore. It's been a whole year of change and evolution and metamorphosis and realizing that I'm actually not who I thought I was at all. But I'm still the same person I was. There's just so much more to me. Sydney is actually Aaron plus, but Aaron could have never been who I am now. So yeah, I think that about wraps it up. There's going to be more spooky shit. There's going to be more nerdy shit. There's going to be more things. There are things that I never actually finished. Like, I never made a third part to the review of Star Wars, Rise of Skywalker. I never went over the third act. That's something I wanted to get back and do, and it's been over a year. I never got back to that. So I want to still do the same things that I did before, but I'm also going to open myself up to several other different things. I've got a larger pool to pull from, if you will. And on that, I think I'm going to wrap it up. Jig Hale is coming back. I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know all of the changes that are going to occur. I'm just going to go for it. Rip the Band-Aid off and be like, hey, here's me now. It's not what I was before. So, until next time, much love. Peace out. Namaste. And goodbye.